The construction of the Mary Rose began in 1510 in Portsmouth, Hampshire, England, and she was launched in July 1511. She was then towed to London and fitted with rigging and decking and supplied with armaments. The common explanation for the ship's name was that it was inspired by Henry VIII's favorite sister, Mary Tudor, and the rose as the emblem of the Tudors. It was far more common at the time to give a ship pious Christian names. The Virgin Mary is a more likely candidate for the namesake. The Mary Rose was substantially rebuilt in 1536. The 1536 rebuilding turned a ship of 500 tons into one of 700 tons, and added an entire extra tier of broadside guns to the old Carrack-style structure. As the Mary Rose was built and served during a period of rapid development of heavy artillery, her armaments was a mix of old designs and innovation. To defend against being boarded, Mary Rose carried large stocks of melee weapons, including pikes. A total of 250 longbows were carried on board, as well as almost 40,000 arrows, bracers, and other archery-related equipment. The Mary Rose first saw battle in 1512 in a joint naval operation with the Spanish against the French. The English were to meet the French and Brighton fleets on the English Channel, while the Spanish attacked them in the Bay of Biscay, and then attacked Gascony. The 35-year-old Sir Edward Howard was appointed Lord High Admiral in April and chose the Mary Rose as his flagship. His first mission was to clear the seas of French naval forces between England to the northern coast of Spain to allow for the landing of supporting troops near the French border at Fuenterrabia. Howard's expedition led to the capture of 12 Breton ships and a 4-day raiding tour of Brittany. The fleet returned to Southampton in June, where it was visited by King Henry. In August, the fleet sailed for Brest, where it encountered a joint but ill-coordinated French-Breton fleet at the Battle of St. Matthew. On the 11th of August, the English burnt 27 French ships, captured another 5, and landed forces near Brest to raid and take prisoners, but storms forced the fleet back to Dartmouth in Devon and then to Southampton for repairs. In the spring of 1513, the Mary Rose was once more chosen by Howard as the flagship for an expedition against the French. On the 11th of April, Howard's force arrived off Brest, only to see a small enemy force join with the larger force in the safety of Brest Harbor and its fortifications. Demoralized by the loss of its admiral and seriously short of food, the fleet returned to Plymouth. The new Lord Admiral Thomas Howard set to the task of arranging another attack on Brittany. The fleet was not able to mount the planned attack because of adverse winds and great difficulties in supplying the ships adequately, and the Mary Rose took up winter quarters in Southampton. In August, the Scots joined France in war against England, but were dealt a crushing defeat at the Battle of Flodden on the 9th of September 1513. A follow-up attack in early 1514 was supported by a naval force that included the Mary Rose. By autumn, the war was over, and the peace treaty was sealed by the marriage of Henry's sister Mary to French King Louis XII. After the peace, Mary Rose was placed in the reserves. She was laid up for maintenance along her sister ship, the Peter Pomegranate, in July 1514. In 1518, then assigned a small skeleton crew who lived on board the ship until 1522. She served briefly on a mission with other warships to scour the seas in preparation for Henry VIII's journey across the Channel to a summit with the French King Francis I at the Field of Cloth of Gold in June 1520. And as history loves to repeat itself, in 1522, England was once again at war with France. This time, it was because of a treaty with the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. The Mary Rose participated in the escort transport of troops in June 1522, and by the 1st of July, the Breton port of Merlux was captured. The fleet sailed home, and the Mary Rose spent the winter in Dartmouth. On the 24th of February 1525, the war was effectively over without any major gains or major victories for the English side. The Mary Rose was kept in reserve from 1522 to 1545. She was once more caulked and repaired in 1527, and her longboat was repaired and trimmed. Little documentation about the Mary Rose between 1528 and 1539 exists. A document written by Thomas Cromwell in 1536 specifies that the Mary Rose and 6 other ships were made new during his service under the king. In 1544, King Henry had agreed to attack France together with Emperor Charles V, and English forces captured Boulogne at great cost in September. But soon England was left in the lurch after Charles had achieved his objectives and brokered a separate peace. In May 1545, the French had assembled a large fleet with the intent to land troops on English soil. On the 19th of July, 1545, the French galleys advanced on the immobilized English fleet and initially threatened to destroy a force of 13 small galleys, the only ships that were able to move against them without a wind. The wind picked up, and the sailing ships were able to go on the offensive before the oared vessels were overwhelmed. Two of the largest ships, the Henry Grace et Dieu and the Mary Rose, led the attack on the French galleys in the Solent. Early in the battle, something went wrong. While engaging, the Mary Rose suddenly heeled heavily over to her starboard side, and water rushed in through the open gun ports. Out of a crew of at least 400, fewer than 35 escaped, a catastrophic casualty rate of over 90%. A salvage attempt was ordered by Secretary of State William Paget only days after the sinking, and Charles Brandon, the king's brother-in-law, took charge of practical details. Charles Brandon was so confident of success that he reassured the king that it would only be a matter of days before they could raise the Mary Rose. The optimism proved unfounded, however. The project was only successful in raising rigging, some guns, and other items. Despite the failure of the first salvage operation, there was still a lingering belief in the possibility of retrieving the Mary Rose, at least until 1546. The Mary Rose was remembered well into the reign of Elizabeth I, and according to one of the Queen's admirals, William Monson, the wreck was visible from the surface at low tide in the late 16th century. The modern search for the Mary Rose was initiated by the South Sea branch of the British Sub-Aqua Club in 1965 as part of a project to locate shipwrecks in the Solent. Following the discovery of the wreck in 1971, the project became known to the general public and received increasing media attention. In 1974, the project received royal patronage from Prince Charles, who participated in dives on the site. The Mary Rose Committee had become a registered charity in 1974, which made it easier to raise funds. In the spring of 1982, after 3 intense seasons of archaeological underwater work, preparations began for raising the ship. The operation soon ran into problems. Early on, there were difficulties with the custom-made lifting equipment. Divers on the project belonging to the Royal Engineers had to be pulled because of the outbreak of the Falklands War, and the method of lifting the hull had to be considerably altered as late as June. On the morning of October 11, 1982, the final lift began. At 9:03, the first timbers of the Mary Rose broke the surface in the presence of the team, Prince Charles, and curious spectators on boats circling the site. Since the mid-1980s, the hull of the Mary Rose has been kept in a covered dry dock while undergoing conservation. Although the hull has been open to the public for viewing, the need for keeping the ship saturated first with water and later a polyethylene glycol solution was meant that visitors had to be separated from the hull by a glass barrier. In September 2009, the temporary Mary Rose display hall was closed to visitors to facilitate construction of the new £35 million museum building, which opened to the public on May 31, 2013. Since opening the new Mary Rose Museum, it has been visited by over 500,000 people.